Hi there, Mike here from Greenway. Well, today I wanted to talk to you about a little ethical dilemma I ran into recently with the electric car. And that was when I was at a high-speed charging station, a level 3. And I don't go to them very much because 95+% of the charging I do is done either at home or at work. But I was at a charging station. It was a charge point station, and there was only one charger there, and there was a car already plugged in when I got there, which is fine. I even knew that it was going to be there because I checked the app before I arrived, but I thought, well, it won't take that long until they're done, I'm sure. So when I got there, I was able to take a look at the screen, and it said their car was at 70 something percent, 75, something like that. So I thought, oh, okay, well, maybe they're only going to charge to 80, or at least I hoped anyway. Now the car was unattended, no one was there, so I just waited around and I could see the numbers slowly ticking up as time went on, 75, 76, and it went to 80 and no one was around and it kept charging, so it kept ticking up slowly as the time went on. Eventually it got to 88, 89, and that's the last I saw, and I assume it got to 90, and then on the screen of the charging station it said charging stopped. Okay, so then I looked around and there was still no owner around for this other car. I waited a bit longer. I thought, well, I don't expect the person to come running out of the building and unplug their car the instant that the car is done charging. So I thought I would wait and see what happens. Well, 5 minutes passed and still nobody there, and no one else around, and it's just me waiting for the charging station. Now, I realized that I could have gone to a different charging station. There were some other options, but I like this particular one. I've used it a couple times, and I know that it works well, and it's predictable. And I was running some level 3 charging experiments with some of my cars, so I wanted to use a same charging station to eliminate that as a factor for my charging cycle and the charging curve. So I was quite interested to actually use this one. And so I just kept waiting. But the question then becomes, 10 minutes have passed now and it says that it's fully charged. Or sorry, it didn't say it's fully charged. It never said that. It said it had stopped charging. So what would be the right thing to do? Should I go and unplug the other person's car and plug the charging unit into mine? I'm not really a big fan of touching other people's stuff, and especially a car. A car is not a low value item. I don't want to touch that. I don't want to, have any contact with it, honestly. I mean, my mind races with all kinds of crazy problems that could happen. What if I tried to disconnect it and something happened and I broke some part of the connector on their car? Or maybe it had already been broken and I thought I broke it, and so there's all kinds of different scenarios that run through my mind of why it's a bad idea to touch someone else's car. When I even go to car shows, sometimes they'll have signs on their cars and they'll say, rings and zippers and snaps and fingernails and all these things, cause scratches on car surfaces. So, unless you're naked, don't touch my car, is what some of those signs say at those car shows. So I have that in mind. And honestly, I don't want other people touching my car either. So just to be respectful to my neighbor, I continue to not do anything. But what's the right thing to do in that scenario? I mean, I could have been there for hours, and fortunately I wasn't. But I didn't know that at the time. I was just sitting there with my car and then this empty other car that was done charging. What would you say is the right thing to do? Should I wait 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then if still no one's there, go ahead and unplug it and plug it into mine? Or should I just keep waiting? Now, I wasn't in a big rush to get anywhere. I had lots of time, and it was a nice day, it was a sunny day, and so there was no panic emergency for me to get charged. The only cost to me was my time, and that day it wasn't some big panic rush, which is a little bit unusual. Often the days are a panic and a rush for me, but that particular day wasn't. So it was nice to be calm and just hanging out and sitting around and relaxing for a few moments in time. We don't have enough days like that. Anyway, what would you do in that scenario? So because I was not in a rush and I had a bit of extra time, I ended up waiting longer just to see what would happen and if the person would bother to come back or not. And this particular charging station, it is charged by the minute. So I assume they were still being charged by the station, even though there was no charging going on, but I can't know that for sure. And when I charged my car up, I actually stopped it when it was, close to fully charged. So I never got to the point where the charging station stopped charging, and so I don't know if they were being charged for idle fees. But anyway, what I did is I ended up waiting, and it was a full half an hour actually from the time their car stopped charging until a half an hour passed, and then someone pulled up behind me in another car. Someone jumped out, they ran to their car, they unplugged it, they hopped in and drove away. So they obviously had someone drop them off. They were, I guess, doing whatever they were doing, and they left. And then I went and plugged in my car, and it worked fine. So, but that's fine for this one-off scenario when I'm just charging my car. Honestly, I was charging my car as an experiment. I was running some tests. Now, it would be a whole nother level of frustration if I was, say, on a road trip and I am stopping at a charging station and I need to charge up and I want to get to a destination within a certain amount of time. I think a scenario like this could be extra annoying. I think some other scenarios, if I wasn't as patient or had no time to spare, I would want to get things moving along a little bit faster. Now, certainly what I would never do is unplug a person's car while it's actively charging. So that wasn't the scenario here. And what it originally was, I mean, I showed up and it was charging, but I had no intention at all of ever unplugging their car while it's charging. That would be, one of the rudest things possible, I think, as it comes to EV charging etiquette. I think the only scenario that I would ever do that is if, I've got some medical emergency going on in my car and I'm trying to take someone to the hospital and I have to stop at a level 3 charger. Hopefully that never happens. But, so I just didn't want to put my hands on their car at all, and I did wait that half an hour. How much longer would I have waited? I don't know. I was probably starting to run out of time and patience by that point in time. I mean, that already was a long time. I just, the last thing I wanted to have happen is, so here's my thinking of that, with that period of time. I have no idea if the person who owned the car had any idea what time their car stopped charging. I mean, if they check on the app, they would have been able to see that it stopped charging, but maybe they didn't. Maybe they didn't think of it. Maybe they left it. I don't know. And so I can just envision the scenario where they pull up, I've unplugged their car and I've got mine plugged in, and there's no escaping that. I mean, there's no saying, oh, I didn't know your car was plugged in, because there's no way of saying that didn't happen. So I could imagine them showing up and them knocking on my window and saying, hey, why'd you unplug my car? And even if I explain what happened, they might react in some negative way, and there's no way to predict that. And then the next thing they'll say to me is, oh, well, while you unplugged your while you ended up unplugging my car, you also broke my charging port and you scratched my car and you left a dent, a door ding, and all this stuff. I mean, what's the chances of that happening? Not very much, but I just want to avoid all that. So I never touched their car. I never went near it. I never touched it. I never unplugged it. But wasted an extra half an hour of my time. I could have been gone almost before they even showed up to pick up their car. So that was the scenario I was in. Have you ever run into that scenario? What would you do in that situation? What do you think the proper etiquette is in unplugging someone's car? Another scenario I've had in the past, a few years ago, is I did pull up to a charging station. Someone was charging. It was a level 2 station, a J1772 plug. And I just left their car charging. But what I did is I opened up my charge port and then walked away and did my shopping. And I was hoping that they would notice my car charge port was open, and they did. And I came back in half an hour to an hour or something. And by the time I got back, their car was gone and my car was being charged. So they kind of took the hint. Now, I guess I could have left a note on my dash if I had a pen and a piece of paper and the forethought to do all that, but it worked out okay in that case anyway. But that's a different scenario. This is a situation where I've got just one level 3 charger, and I wanted to get your thoughts on that. Thanks for listening to my rambling and my overthinking the situation, but it's one of those ones where you want to have a plan for it, and it's probably something that will be coming up more and more often with more EVs on the road and more charging stations, and trying to get that ratio of charging stations to EVs worked out so that there isn't a line or there isn't a traffic jam or a bottleneck at those charging stations. And for me, most of the time, I don't use those stations anyway, because I'm mostly charging at home or at work, so it doesn't really come up too much for me. Anyways, thanks a lot for watching. I hope you found the video interesting or informative, or at least got you thinking about this situation. I appreciate it if you would consider giving me a thumbs up, and also consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.